Hello and welcome to Forward. Our guest today is Rakesh Yadav, the CEO and founder of Jarvis ML. Jarvis enables companies to deploy a revenue generating intelligence engine to their businesses and products within minutes. Before founding Jarvis, Rakesh led machine learning operations platform development for Google Ads and payments. Jarvis is funded by Dell Technologies Capital, SHAKTI, and more than a dozen veteran Silicon Valley technologists and business leaders. In this episode, we talk about applying lessons from Google to boost revenues at e-commerce and hospitality companies, building a horizontal platform vertical by vertical, and combining deep learning with other techniques to maximize business results. We also talk about the reasons why Jarvis team is spread across the globe, and why finding time to paint is important to Rakesh. Rakesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Artem, for having me here. It's amazing to be on the show.
You started Jarvis last year after 14 years at Google. What opportunity did you see in the market that led you to start the company?
Yeah, honestly, I stayed for 14 years because I was waiting for a green card. So that's the main reason to stay there longer. Within Google, also, I kept creating 0 to 1 projects. But one of the main opportunities was my last project in Google, where we started a team which was focused on ads machine learning platform. And the key premise being for an idea to reach production, it used to take 6 to 9 months. Of course, Google Ads comes with like its own challenges, which is like tens of terabytes of data being processed every day, total of exabytes and whatnot. So I wanted to reduce that time. We set out an ambitious goal to reduce that time to like 1 day. So that way, idea can reach production on the same day. By the time I left, while we could not do 1 day, many teams were able to get an idea to production in 3 to 4 days, which was very relevant in these last 2 years, COVID times, where the entire world was changing very quickly. And the insight being, if at Google Ads, where we have all the resources and tech and as tech and tech folks, as well as like human power, as well as the technical compute capacity, if you were there, this was such a big problem. What are the rest of the enterprises on the planet doing? So that's why we wanted to increase the utility function of machine learning. So basically, I quit, and bunch of Google leadership also invested, and bunch of Googlers also joined me of my team, and we started Jarvis ML. So that way we can help rest of the enterprises on the planet achieve scalable implementation of machine learning in their businesses, and hopefully help them grow their revenue.
What were the main insights that led you to speed this up from 6 months to 3 days?
Yeah. So what we did was we ended up building everything from the feature curation, like data ingestion, all the way to feature generation and serving and training, basically inference. Everything we deployed as a system microservices, and then we deployed a control plane so that people can just submit configs. So one of the main challenges that happens for in the world is the infrastructure guys don't know machine learning, and the machine learning folks don't know infrastructure. So when ML folks build up a model in their collab, getting it out to production requires like another set of infrastructure folks to get that out. So what we did was, from their collabs, they can just deploy, and we put their model in production behind like simple RPC APIs, and they can just start using immediately within hours.
Building underlying infrastructure.
And then connecting everything end to end.
Sounds good. Then you started Jarvis and you decided to go after e-commerce and hospitality. Why these two markets?
E-commerce was because in my Google 11 years of payments experience, I've helped a lot of e-commerce projects. For example, Google App Play Store. So I'm a lot more heavily involved in e-commerce places. So that was natural for us. Secondly, in e-commerce world, there are a lot of standard platforms like Shopify, WooCommerce, which at least give us a constant data plane to operate on. So, for example, we have like one-click Shopify app, which people can just install and just launch Jarvis in like less than 30 minutes. So, because of those insights, we went to e-commerce. The vacation rental, we in Q4, e-commerce companies close down because of peak shopping season, right? So they don't change their interest stack so much. So one of my friends is one of my contacts is Twitty. He hosts these 1,100 beachfront facing properties in Outer Banks, North Carolina. So he invited me saying, "Hey, what are you doing on machine learning? Let's talk." and that's how we got there. We're like, I went there while I had a good time. We identified like few use cases where we can actually launch, and that's how we are vacation rental started.
And I can totally relate to the last quarter rush when nobody installs new technology in first quarter in e-commerce and retail in general.
Yeah, so it was out of necessity actually.
So what kind of challenges did you encounter there in both e-commerce and hospitality that you decided are the best fit to address with the machine learning systems?
E-commerce is a lot more mature in terms of technologies. Like they're a lot more hyper aware of how technology can help them scale. So while that is true, so while technology is mature, the machine learning penetration is not there yet. So there's like a billions and trillions of dollars being shopped on in the US market. So I did like market sizing exercise in typical, fashion of like evaluating a new vertical. And e-commerce looked very enticing even if we capture 10% of the market. And while there are a lot of rules-based systems, not many folks are doing like the machine learning-based predictive personalization that our suite of products provide. That was like a little bit easier. On the vacation rental side, they are like 10 years behind. So it was like very easy to get in, revamp the entire tech stack very quickly using our technology. And then, of course, one of the biggest challenges over there is that not many people understand machine learning. So we have to spend a lot of time on the messaging and getting them. Basically, we made sure our products are very easy to integrate, and the machine learning part is actually very well hidden from them. So we basically have widgets which people can embed in their sites, and then it automatically captures data, trains regularly, pushes a new model behind experimentation without any one of our clients needing to worry about all that.
Ease of adoption is critical for that group. So it makes them two quite distinct groups, I would say. What's your current thought process about how to approach both of them?
Yeah, so when you're building platform, you don't want only one class of use cases because otherwise you'll specialize in that domain. So that was the other reason why I always wanted to pick two or three. So we'll just keep doing that because at the end of the day, this needs to be a generic platform where any use case can be solved. While we are picking these two verticals, over time we can keep adding more and more products on different verticals. So it was a very conscious go-to-market strategy to always have more than one. In terms of the differences, though, the schemas of the two vertical, like the data ingestion schemas, are very different. So we have a schema like the data schema, which is e-commerce specific, and then another one which is hospitality or vacation rental specific. But after that, the ML models, the training pipelines, the inference engines, the serving, everything else is basically generic. So we'll keep doing both of them, and we'll probably add more.
It is important for any platform to eventually expand into multiple verticals to become a real, as you said, horizontal platform and not vertical specific one. And one of the most important strategy decisions to make is when to expand, because you get too many verticals, you get spread too thin, and then you cannot serve anyone well. You get too few verticals, you become pigeonholed into a segment, and then the risk being overrun by a platform competitor who actually built their technology in other markets and now got into yours to take your piece of the pie.
Exactly. And then also the one quick conscious decision we have made is the products are exactly the same across the board. So for example, predictive recommendations, where we put the widget on the site and then we do the recommendations, which is highly personalized for every user. It's both on e-commerce and hospitality is the same. Same with like predictive sales, same with predictive search. So I've made sure the products are very are translatable across verticals. We don't want to build vertical specific yet.
Let's talk about the business capabilities of Jarvis. So, what can it do for me as a merchant or as a vacation rental homes owner?
At the end of the day, we just want to apply machine learning on every piece of the business. So there are like some foundational things which we do. For example, we compute like a long term value of all their customers. So that way you can you can have a proxy of like purchasing power of the individual customer, and the site experience is very highly personalized to each customer. We also have like some other foundational things like taste based models. For example, we can tell that Rakesh likes t-shirt versus Artem likes a collared shirt, and that actually gets fed in the recommendation. Third thing is we do cohorts analysis. So even if the customer is not logged in or not known, based on their site behaviors, we can tell that Artem and Rakesh are similar. But Rakesh, who is a known customer, has purchased this. Probability of Artem purchasing the same is higher. So we show that as recommendation. And all of these foundational investments actually get used in three broad products right now. One is personalized recommendation, which is what like whenever customer is coming on the site, our widget actually shows them highly personalized three recommendations. Second is personalized search. So people embed our JavaScript and then mark a search button as a Jarvis search, and we take once the customer clicks, we take over the search experience and then show highly personalized ranked results, which is different than textbook search results, which basically you and me searching the same thing will get the same results. Versus in our case, we actually rank order them based on taste, LTV, purchasing behavior, site interactions, all of those. And then the third is predictive sales, where we actually curate audiences to send the email marketing campaign, and we embed the same recommendations in that email. So even if you and me are both part of the same marketing campaign, we will both get a very highly personalized dynamic email. Because of all of these techniques, our numbers, our CTR numbers, and all of this have been really good. People have benchmarked us against other competitors and rules based engines. And in A/B tests, we have outperformed them handsomely. And because of that, we have increased the revenue of bit from 5 to 15% for our majority of all of our customers.
In your materials, you also talk about some other elements. Should I consider those complementary, like insights and market forecasting, revenue forecasts, anomaly alerts?
Yeah, so because we already have data, so doing revenue forecasting and anomaly alerts is natural for us. So we just build that and give it for free, honestly, for all of our customers. So that way they will have like an analytics suite for their execs, and they also can watch like, oh, why did business go down on this time, or watch the seasonality and patterns and revenue forecasting. That's our way of like helping folks so that they don't have to build out analytics suite, and then we can deliver value on day one. So the minute let's say someone on Shopify, they install app, they can go to app.jarvisml.com and see their analytics and insights without even talking to us.
And you're giving it all for free as a complementary products for now, I assume, before they become really mature.
I think the analytics part will always remain free. The predictive recommendations and rest of the products that I was talking about are actually a priced product.
Right. The core functionality is personalization, and it has its fee.
Yeah.
What's the customer profile? What type of companies will benefit most from Jarvis?
Typically, we are like end-to-end solution. So typically, someone who wants to leverage the power of machine learning but doesn't have engineering superpowers. Also, like machine learning engineers are like a minority compared to the broader engineering pool. So ideal customer is in this phase at least. Ideal customer is like someone who's doing between 1 million to 300 million ARR, and they want to just launch something very quickly. Even bigger folks can launch and embed us. Just that I consciously didn't want to get into a fight with a big engineering team. So that's why ideal customer profile, we have kept it below 300 million. Yeah.
And that challenge of dealing with the big engineering teams at the organizations, can you pack it a little bit? What concerned you there? Why did you decide to not go?
No, it's just a go-to market strategy. You have to focus some part of the segment, right? So, assuming this will be a Gaussian curve, like there are so many companies who are in that less than 300 million. So already there's like enough of a market there. Also, the larger companies, if they have like let's say 5 ML engineers, right? So there will always be this question that how come, like, why can't we do it? Why can't we do it? Right. So I just don't have the energy right now. Like naturally, our brand will have achieve enough value, and naturally they will actually start using us. I just don't have resources, time, or money to actually convince them all. Yeah.
Focusing is paramount for startups.
That kind of focus actually helped us. Like we were able to generate revenue in like 4 months since we started. Like that kind of focus actually helped us.
This is impressive, and this is how most of the startups should be built, except if you're dealing with some very deep tech.
Yeah.
And is there a floor on the bottom? What size of the customer will be too small?
Yeah, so typically machine learning requires data. So if someone who doesn't have like let's say 10,000 visitors or 5,000 visitors a month, we might not have enough data. So just rules based systems actually work. And market is filled with like a lot of these plugin rules based systems which people can leverage first before. So yeah, that's the floor is on the data side rather than. I mean, I use 1 million as a proxy for that.
And speaking of the data that machine learning models need, what data does Jarvis take in?
Yeah, so we take technically we are data hungry. I mean, every machine learning engineer will say that. So specifically, we take everything around customer, so their past purchases, their profile, their customer data, their site behavior like Google Analytics. Then we take the marketing data from like let's say Salesforce, HubSpot, or Klaviyo, and then we tie it all with like some public open source data sets like census information and all of that, and all of that gets fed in this brain where series of models get run, and we deploy like a model version. We train as often as we can, and we deploy a new model version in production where the inferences happen.
And when you talk about that open source data, you mentioned that in your materials that there is enrichment data. And I was going to ask what kind of enrichment data you're talking about. So if you can
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm a ex Googler, right? So one of my mentors is Guha, who wrote like schema.org, and he's like a Google fellow. He's also an investor, thankfully, in our company. So he created this project called datacommons.org, which is available for everybody. So his mission is to assemble a bunch of these data sets and make them available for everybody, which helped a lot during COVID days, for example. So and then they maintain the infrastructure of keeping it fresh, serving it, all of that. So basically we partner with them and get like census data from them, and we basically any data that I need, I first go to him. Hey, do you want to open source this data sets? And sometimes I basically try to get on their roadmap, but everybody should take a look at data commons. It's a good effort.
Okay, so I'll mention it in the show notes so everyone can go and check it out. So the sensor data that you mentioned, how does it play into the personalization or any other capabilities of Jarvis?
Yeah, so census data is just like population data by zip code, like how big is the population, and then the configuration and all of that. So we take that is like one of many actually. So we take that into account by saying that okay, this user is from this location, and generally this population has this buying pattern around here, and hence we feed that as into a recommendation engine and then give similar products. Basically, it's one of the factors which allows us to rank.
If an organization decides to use Jarvis, how long will it take them to implement it, to get first results and then to get full power of the platform?
Yeah, so assuming that fits our ICP, like ideal customer profile, what we do, and also if it is fits our integration, for example, let's say someone on Shopify who is just Salesforce or HubSpot or Klaviyo, they basically can install the app themselves. It's available on Shopify App Store, so they'll get the analytics free on day one. And then there's a drag and drop in Shopify admin console. So in 30 minutes, they can drop the recommendation on their site, pick the placement. There's some 15-20 minutes of work of CSS so that it fits the styling, which either they do it themselves or we help them, assuming they don't like the current styling. Basically, and then yeah, in 30 minutes we are able to launch someone. So the recommendations will start showing. We do take like one day like daily training. So the next day the recommendations will become a lot more better. So over a period of like let's say 1-2 weeks, it matures. based on like all the data, and we show all the metrics of performance metrics, CTRs, conversion, how much purchases we have made across their site. So yes, to launch it, 30, 40 minutes, 1 hour on standard stack. For getting the results, like 1 2 weeks, assuming enough data. And after that, it just basically it increases CTR and then it keeps it stable, right? The key point is because of the daily training and frequent training, any market dynamics changes that happens with the new data, our ML models actually adapt very quickly in the next training run. So basically, the customer really can just sleep and like sleep in peace and not worry about like, oh, the COVID hit, how should I adapt? So it's like a lot more adaptable and flexible. So the returns will keep on happening until the widget is on the site.
So weeks, a few weeks
Days.
to the first days to the first results.
Yeah.
And if you need to install it on a non-standard stack, maybe it's your own homegrown e-commerce system, then it will take longer depending on your internal team ability to integrate it.
Yeah. So we do have APIs. So for example, the Shopify app actually calls our internal APIs. So if someone has a custom stack, basically some of our customers do. So we expose those APIs. So that's the API integration, where they can just call in the API and then own the entire flow and the entire implementation. We support that as well.
And to measure the impact of Jarvis on your customers, it's done through A/B tests.
We always keep 10-20% A/B test. Some customers just trust us so much that they moved it 100%. They're like, why leave money on the table? But yeah, we do a A/B test, and then also we split those numbers between known customers and unknown customers. So our value add actually comes on unknown customers because of the cohort like similarity. We can tell that this customer is similar to this known customer. So our recommendations are, for example, for unknown customers, not logged in customers, it's very hard to achieve like more than 1% CTR. But we for some of our customers, we have gotten to like 3-4% CTR, which actually, as you can imagine, they have spent so much ads money to bring them on the site. We are moving them down into a funnel and then making them repeat customers. So we are actually helping them gain more customers in addition to like generating revenue.
Your impact on unknown customers is so high because for known customers, they usually already have some tools that they apply, but they usually have nothing for unknown customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is definitely one of the differentiation points of Jarvis from the rest of the market, ability to work with unknown customers. What would you say are other important ways Jarvis is different from what else is available?
Yeah. One of the most common things when people say they do machine learning products, it's actually they're all like rules based, a lot more heavily. And then even when people who actually apply machine learning, they train once and then use that model. So the second differentiator on us is actually we train daily, weekly, depending on the data size. So we adapt a lot more quickly to changing markets, and that's why our numbers continue to hold steady rather than like it works today, but then someone else has to change the rules to in like 1 month or 1 quarter. It's as good as like someone who is actually changing rules daily if they are doing a rules based. And then the last piece is easy to integrate. Like it's so easy. You put our Jarvis ML SDK JavaScript, and then mark a div as recommendation, and then our JS SDK actually swaps out and then starts doing showing recommendation. It's very easy for like non-technical person to launch it.
The AI that is actually not really an AI, but a bunch of old school algorithms just branded as AI. I call it a snake oil salesman AI. And yeah, you can encounter quite a bit of that. Lots of people who doing proper AI, just like you guys, but it's the temptation is too strong.
Yep. In all fairness, we also do heuristics. So basically, we just implement like 10-20 models, and we have a system which picks the best one. If someone who has like, let's say, sparse data, heuristics actually perform much better. So we do have heuristics as backup. Or someone who's like doesn't have enough data, or they just launched a new site, they won't have data. So typical heuristics actually do work so that we can gather data, and then the machine learning models kick in. But we basically do anything and everything that works for our customers at the end of the day. Like all techniques are welcome here.
a practical approach.
Yep.
And that makes sense. I think this is the way forward. It will take us a moment to develop machine learning systems to the level that where they can handle what we currently can handle with low data volumes with heuristics.
Yep.
And until then, we need the hybrid models. Okay, we'll talk about what is under the hood in a minute. But before that, what's your most favorite examples of Jarvis implementation?
Our most favorite example, I would give two. One is, for example, 2D.com, right? It's a vacation rental. They, we were visiting them, I think, December 15th. We were visiting them and we came up with this idea of like, we'll do this recommendation. And Ross Toody, who's amazing, like he goes for like new innovative ideas. So he's probably like leading the forefront of the vacation rental market. So he was so excited because also our pedigree of Google Ads and all of that helped. So it looked like showing Google Ads. So he was like, "Hey, why can't we do that instead of and swap our recommendations with that? Like, sounds good." So we built it in like I think 9 days, and then we launched it. And he was so adamant about launching it before even. So we launched it on Christmas Day, while like people are on holiday. And actually, thank you for my team. Like it actually performed. Like I was nervous, and I went on vacation in Mexico as well. So I was nervous that whether it will hold the load and all of that. But this is what having an awesome team feels like. So it launched on 25th. Everybody agreed that we launched it, and it performed. It outperformed. They were A/B testing us with others, 50-50, and it outperformed. Like well-known, I will not put the name, but well-known marketing software for which they pay like 250K a year by like 5x. So we outperformed them by 5x. So that was one of the best ones. Same with email marketing campaign. So for example, when we launched, our click-through rate is like 61%. Our unsubscribe rate is like 0.2%, which is like very unheard of. Typically, people are used to like 10-20% click-through rate. Unsubscribe is like typically 1-2%, or like they kill any campaign which is more than 1-2%. So yeah, that was also like we were able to, and we measure how much per bookings we brought. So it was great to like count money. It was like 250K a day we were making them like, and it was great to just keep counting and that money keep growing. It was good. It was all around amazing success on both teams, like to decide as well as our side. And they're still our biggest champion. Like he keeps sending us through word of mouth more customers. I'm very appreciative of that.
The results are impressive, so it's natural. And yeah, definitely thank you to them for spreading the word out. Do you want to talk about e-commerce example?
Oh, sure. So another one is bare bottom clothing, where I think they benchmarked us against Shopify recommendation, and we basically outperformed. So now they moved like everything like 100% over as well. And the good piece about that one is we were able to launch them in like less than 1 week from the idea. And these days, we our some of our customers which are on standard stack, we launched them in like 30 minutes. Like even within the call, we are like, let's do this in the Shopify console. So all of these are like amazing moments.
They are. They are. And it does sound like it's an easy to try, easy to set up, and fast to results solution for e-commerce customers, especially working on those popular platforms like Shopify. And for customers in hospitality that are brave enough to make the leap and try new technology, it seems like a huge boost to their results and tangible revenues.
Yep. And then also at the end of the day, these folks are building their own brand, right? So from that, by doing direct to customer consumer selling, so it helps them like with highly personalized. They are showing a lot more relevant results. It helps them have better engagement as well. So while we talk about revenue, the engagement of their customer base is also basically we're not showing junk on this site, right? So that helps them a lot as well in terms of building up a brand.
You don't show junk, you don't annoy your customers,
Yeah,
which is a lead to future revenues.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about AI systems that power Jarvis capabilities. Talk about your overall ML stack and what models do you use to enable different functionality.
Yeah. So we like bunch of us are Googlers, so we are a little bit biased towards Google technology because we know that inside out. So in terms of training systems, we really use TensorFlow. Likewise, for serving as well, we use like TensorFlow serving. Partly because I know the people who actually wrote it as well, so that helps a lot. In terms of data processing, I instead of like using Apache Spark or something, I wrote a streaming system which just uses like cloud functions, and there is like a control layer where you just submit configs, and we only write sources and sinks, and through that config we can connect them and route them. So it uses like PubSub and cloud functions. As you can imagine, because of that, the maintenance set is nothing. So there's nothing to maintain, and as load comes in, more cloud function systems get deployed automatically. And PubSub gives you that buffer in between for a peak load until the machine is ramping up. So that way it stays in queue, so we don't lose anything. Also, our customers never see any downtime. And that I wrote, I think, in Q3, and so far, like nobody touched that code, and it still is running. I think it handles like last I checked, like 120 QPS or something, which is not bad for a startup. And yeah, so far it has been serving as well. In terms of ML techniques, we use basically everything under the sun. So if you, for example, for pricing, we have like very deep math-based heuristic models with the pricing, which encodes like supply and demand. For let's say image classification, we use like transfer learning. So it's like deep neural net model, but we take off the shelf. I think it was like ImageNet or VSS 16, which we end up using, and then we remove the top layer and then train it with customer data. For for text, we use a series of like NLP techniques. For similarity, as you like, we use everything from cosine to like graph mining techniques so that we can cluster things together. For just a ranking, we are again have like a deep neural net model. So basically, yeah, everything is in-house built, and we just end up running all of these, and we keep adding more and more techniques.
And everything is in-house built.
Yeah, we end up using like a Kubernetes cluster, and after that we just write everything on top because it's we really need something simple, and also our guys we can write things easily.
Gotcha. What important innovations you would single out that happened in machine learning over the last couple of years that help power Jarvis?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is just standardization of these training frameworks. So that way, like for example, TensorFlow or PyTorch. So that way, everybody stops inventing the wheel on the infrastructure and platform side of things, and then at least everybody starts collaborating with like models which can be shared across the board. So that helped a lot. There's still, I mean, ML is still so early. This is why we started this company. So it's still very early days. Another big thing is these like as I was saying, transfer learning. So, for example, Google, Facebook, training all of this on their large image data sets and then giving the embeddings out. Or, for example, the BERT embedding on the NLP side. Those things have helped a lot on us for us. So, first, the standardization of framework, so we can leverage it. Then, sharing all of these model artifacts like embeddings and all of that. And then, not just embeddings, even common data sets, like I was saying, data commons. So all of those actually helped us a lot in our part. Otherwise, we will never have enough data to like achieve any accuracy.
Infrastructure, data, and the actual models, embeddings, transfer learning. Yeah, they all happened. You mentioned them, and then I thought about how that all happened in the last few years. That actually really changed what we can do and how fast we can build things there, and what is accessible to smaller teams.
Yep, I participated in that story while I was in Google. So
Right, you did. So machine learning models are probabilistic in their outputs, and it often means that traditional software guardrails needed to control models' output values and filter inappropriate ones. Is it applicable to Jarvis?
yeah, I mean that is a common problem everywhere. Our approach has been we We train first one model. That's why ensemble model approach and then averaging it out helps. So that way, a probability something that is missed by one model could be caught by others. So while accuracy is a little bit sacrificed, the outlier events ironed out. But still, after that, there's still a heuristics on outlier cases which are typically business knowledge. Like for example, seasonality, right? So during peak season, don't drop the price below this threshold. So we still have those guardrails, which are business. Typically, they are business acumen, which yeah, we are not doing research. We're doing applied. So we do whatever makes sense. I have a rule: if you can write math, don't use machine learning.
If it's more efficient with simple math, don't throw that data hungry and compute hungry machine learning model on it.
No, even more than compute and whatnot, just the probabilistic nature of ML model output. Like math will be very clear, predictive, consistent. Wasn't there a joke like you say you give machine learning model number 3 and they're like, oh, 2.24, right? Like it slowly converges to, never comes to 3. But you can just write 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2 equals 3 in math and you're done.
And also, it's important for business owners to understand that, just as you said in that example, that the price will not be dropped just because machine learning model decided so, and they still have control over the boundaries outside of which machine learning model will not venture.
Yep. Basically, that overrules. In any applied place, it will be very hard to skip the adjustment rule. I call that adjustment layer on top of ML layer. Especially when the stakes are high, you really want some adjustment layers with guardrails.
I call it safeguarding layer because sometimes you're right. In most sensitive cases, like for example, I know comma.ai, they talked about how their machine learning model applies torque to the steering wheel, and you don't want your steering wheel to just randomly turn with huge torque in one direction, so they limited.
Yep. Even in that one, like you can just do exponential decay function using math, right? So don't go beyond certain threshold and exponentially decay it, torque. Yeah, that is like a simple math encoding. Why use a machine learning for that?
They use machine learning because they need to center the car on the within the lane, and so machine is the model is end to end. It predicts what kind of torque you need to apply so the car stays within the lane, and then you need the safeguarding layer to basically make sure that whenever it's mistaken,
Yep.
the bad numbers will not go to the computer controller.
Yeah. Similar examples on healthcare side as well. Like it can get very tricky, right? Like so you want the outliers to be cut off.
Exactly. Let's talk about the data. How do you approach data preparation for the models?
Yeah, so thankfully we went to these verticals where we actually wrote our strict schema, and then if and then we have APIs which are like very strict. So thankfully, our data is a lot more well formed than a typical like out in the wild machine learning use cases. So that's the benefit of having focusing on verticals first rather than building a platform, because then random anybody will bring whatever data. So on our side, we have an easier problem, which is our schemas are strict. Of course, when they are missing values, it's are missing, so it's fine. And then we wrote an aggregation engine where we compute like derived features. So these are like the base data, and then we compute like momentum, all of these derived features through just aggregation. It's like rolling window counts, all of that. So we wrote that aggregation engine ourselves. And then all of this we store in a feature store and then gets fed into a machine learning model. And then of course we do evaluation where the shape is not that different from between train and test set, and we continue checking for other failure modes. But thankfully on the data side it's all very strict, so I don't have that problem, thankfully.
For now,
Yeah.
as long as you work with the structured data that is supplied from those platforms. But eventually, if you venture outside of it,
Yep. Yep. Oh no, I've been there. Yeah. I We will see when we cross that bridge. We'll see when we get there. But on this front also, it was a conscious decision again to actually build out a schema for this same problem. Otherwise, it would have been like all of these customers have their own, schemas, it would have been very brutal to like handle all of them. So this time to launch for every customer, that having a strict schema is actually one of the biggest advantage or reasons. Otherwise, we'll have to understand the schema of every customer.
Right. And I see how you can do it with Shopify and WooCommerce and other platforms. But when you deal with the home build e-commerce system, they can have all types of data architectures. So how do you then standardize it?
Yeah, so we basically give them our API spec like this. This is the orders. This is the purchases information we need. This is the customer information we need. This is the Google data analytics schema we need. This is basically these are the fields that you need to find and post to our API. And so we basically give them an API spec of our APIs.
So you rely on them to produce the integration.
Yep. Also, they can give us like a export of their data, and we for like bigger customers we are willing to do it. But at the end of the day, within our platform, that API is strict. Like we don't skip that. So we can convert from their data into ours for bigger customers. But once it enters the Jarvis platform, we really don't. It's very strict schema.
Right. Yeah, that standardization, I can see how it accelerates or simplifies the rest of the steps. What were some of the challenges your team had to overcome in designing and implementing deep learning models while building Jarvis?
Yeah, thankfully, bunch of us have done it few times at probably the largest deployment on the planet. So we have experience on that. For example, like we are very conscious of like training, serving SKUs, all of that. Like all the basically we have all the battle scars. So we make sure from day one they are handled. In terms of few challenges, some of our customers have very small data sets. So I think in the early phases, we were desperate enough to like accept them, and of course we could not deliver results. So because it's just not enough data. So it was like hundreds of events, not even like thousands, so per month. So knowing that and accepting it was one of the biggest things. Second piece is of course deploying all of this in a cluster and keeping it all running. It's a hard problem. We have like multiple levels of monitoring, all of that. And one of the best decisions we made actually was like keep the abstractions at API level. Everything is wrapped behind APIs. So that way things are easy to shuffle around as needed. Like you want to move from like MySQL to BigQuery or Postgres to MySQL. Rest of the system doesn't need to know. Like it's behind APIs. So only one API at a time you can do it. So yeah, typical standard best practices. Thankfully, it comes second nature to our team.
Keeping the model running smooth in production and keeping performance high in production. And that's a typical challenge. And especially since the company is growing and the amounts of data processed are growing.
Yep. And then also the like basically we are remote first company. So we are in like three countries, India, Japan, and US. So just the communication is like, yeah, it's that's probably the biggest challenge. Like I don't get to have fun with my people. If they are all here, I would have like, partied with them every day.
That's a downside.
Yeah. The different new world order. Yeah.
Do you travel to each other often?
Yeah. So for example, just last week, Ben from our Japan team was visiting for 2 weeks. Folks visit from other places. So that's why having this office is good so that we can host folks. Just yesterday, one person from India, like our PM from India, was visiting. So having like a home for the company is very helpful.
Yeah, and you constantly have a flow of your team members, which is great to see them
Yep.
face to face.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the overall adoption of the ML techniques in the e-commerce industry and hospitality industry. We talked about it a little bit. So you mentioned that hospitality is further behind and e-commerce maybe a little bit kind of ahead in terms of overall technology adoption, but not necessarily ML. So what do you see our industry in terms of ML adoption? Is it innovators, early adopters? How do you see them? And what do you think will be the next inflection points that will enable the rest of the market to adopt AI systems?
Yeah, so on the stage, I think e-commerce is a lot more in the early adopter side of space, and then on the vacation rental is a lot more on the innovation, like early, like too early phase. Like we need to, we are doing our part to solve that. For example, in e-commerce, the big companies, they probably, like for example, the Walmarts and of course Amazon, they definitely use ML, but except if you remove 1%, top 1% most GMV, everybody else think from their perspective, they really want to do sell goods. Like applying ML is not really a priority per se. So we don't have that much penetration there. Also, the market is filled with a lot of rules based systems, so people get burnt a little. Like they tried like three systems, and none of them worked. So they're like, never mind. So there is like a lot of those education, like experimentation that has gone wrong without like clear application of ML. Right, like in the background, they didn't really use ML. So there's a lot of sour taste, let's just say. But hopefully, we'll be solving that. Like the longer we stay, we will just keep solving and keep adapting. In terms of the biggest inflection point, this is what we are actually hyper focused on. What would increase the utility function of ML in these two verticals is we should not talk about ML, right? Like we should really build out a very easy to integrate intelligent products which have clear ROI and has a clear benefit, like a path to showing the benefit. The closer to revenue it will be, the better it will be for all of these folks to understand. In the background, it can use ML, but the technology is not needed. Like, what's the benefit to the customer? So the key point would be the more intelligent products we all can build, which can leverage ML in the background, and it should be very easy to integrate, easy to test, and deliver clear value to the customer. Once that happens, then who will say no to like one click install, which will increase my revenue by 5%, and then constantly adapts every day, right? Like it's a no brainer. We go to the extent that we actually give the first weeks, months free. Like, hey, just try it. So yeah, who will say no to that? So that will help increase like that will be a good inflection point. The more of these simple products which actually really work, then it will be like everybody wants to grow their business. So hopefully it will be a no-brainer for them.
Nobody will say no to one click or even two click solution, even if it takes a little bit effort to install. It's still going to be no brainer.
And no maintenance, so no continuous hit on the team, on the customer, right? So it's like fully hosted solution. You integrate and fire and forget.
The more prospective customers will see, as you said, the implementations at their peers and see that those implementations work, the easier it is going to be. So it is about the healing those burns from the previous systems and showing that there is a better way to get to the results. Okay, let's talk about the origins of the idea and the company. You said you saw it at Google. You did it at Google. You simplified and accelerated machine learning technologies adoption within Google. And now you're ready to go and build your own business. How did you decide to start a company? What was your thinking process? What kind of things you went through, pros and cons, and then all those things, how they converge to lead you to the decision?
Yeah, as people say, right? Like after 20 years of hard work, you are overnight success. So it like I've been thinking about starting company for like 20 years. I think within Google, because I was waiting out the green card process, like India queue is pretty big. So I was waiting it out. But within Google also, I thankfully I achieved a reputation of doing 0 to 1 projects. So leadership will like any new initiative that they have to do, like they would actually call my name. So I'll build out like a case like market study, build out a team, actually deliver, and build out a case for reaching 1 billion ARR. My batting average has been like, I think I was involved in 14 projects and 8 of them reached billion plus ARR. And 7 of them I killed in like 6 to 9 months because I could not see a path to billion plus ARR. So the killing part, while you can call it failure, but that's also good learning, right? Like if in Google, a lot of things are easier. If not 1 billion, then it's like waste of time. So I didn't want to waste my time like that. So there are like a lot of learnings through like these 14 projects that I have iterated on. Thankfully, one of the best ones that I actually am very proud about is actually not technical. Like thankfully, I have like 50, 100 friends who have worked with in past 14 years. Thankfully, 12 of them are actually here with me as well. And then hopefully more will come. But the best thing is basically the people. I think that has been the most positive, gratifying experience of last 15 years. And in terms of why quit and start a company, I personally have a rule like I want to 10x my utility function in 10 years, every 10 years. And within Google, while I was on track to be VP, it would not have increased my utility function by 10x in the next 10 years. So this is one way to do it.
Getting a business to 1 billion ARR multiple times, yeah, that's more than anyone can ask for. Lots of people will be happy by getting only one business to 1 billion ARR, even if 50 businesses before that failed. So talking about businesses that failed is almost misnomer here.
Yeah, that's just lessons. Yeah. I think in all fairness, like Google did pay me very well as well. So I think that was the biggest thing that I had to like really figure out. So my process of quitting was like I told in October, but I left in March. But like for October, November, December, I wrote and wrote in my diaries, like every thought process. Like it was, in hindsight, it looks stupid, but during that process, it was very stressful. Let's just say.
You mean the stressful part was finally leaving the company that you spent 16 years with and kind of be on your own for the first time in 16 years?
Yeah, yeah. And then also, I mean, I do have multiple businesses which I have built out, which generates revenue as well. So in terms of businesses, I can do that. That was not a problem. But it was more like, for example, my mom was like, when she found out I'm quitting, she would send all these Google benefits to me. Like, why are you quitting? Look at all these benefits. And I was like, Mom, I managed like 40% across 2 countries in Google. I know these benefits by heart. So she would like bring me all these articles about, look, working at Google is so awesome. Healthcare is great. This and that. Yeah,
Yeah, our moms are always so worried about us. And yeah, we should be thankful.
that's moms. Yeah.
So, how did you end up with the people in across so many countries?
Yeah. So for example, India and US, like I always like even in Google, I had teams in India and US. It makes sense even for like having 24/7 on call. So that way nobody does on call at night. So even for that reason, that is needed. And then also my talent pool, like my network is in India and US. So those two are always on the charts. Naoki, who actually is a staff engineer in Google, who actually actually he quit before me to join me, like 2 weeks before me. He was like staff engineer. He was on my past team in payment fraud. Once he heard that I'm quitting, he quit as well because he wanted to join. He decided to move to Japan because he's from Japan. So he joined over here, then moved to Japan. So I could not say no because like I absolutely love him. So then we ended up building a team around him because him alone will not be there. Currently, we have like I think 5%, 6% team in Japan as well because and now he leads them. So that's how we ended with Japan of all the places. It's all personal. All people. Yeah, it's all people. Like my people move over to them. I just help. Basically, I just enable them whatever they want.
I see. Organically spread around the globe. And you totally supportive of that. Is it one of the lessons from Google? And overall, what are the lessons from Google that you apply currently at your company?
The biggest one being is just that, like, optimize for people. It's always about people. So that one I never forget. Thankfully, like I go with the approach of wolf pack. Like we all take care of each other no matter what. Like life throws curveballs at you. We just cover each other. For example, like I broke 3 fingers, right? Like right now I have like 3 broken fingers. I can't type, but others are like covering for me. I can't code. So I'm like a lot more heavily focused on sales and marketing. But I have a great team, so engineering is not needed. So my coding fingers are not needed. So that is the biggest one. Second biggest is which I personally always go for is like I don't do tech for the sake of doing tech. I am very hyper focused on customer and utility we generate on the customer, and that says a lot because if there's no value add, there's no need to write a single line of code or build anything if there's no like utility function. So I'm a very hyper focused on even in Google. I was like always figuring out a ideal customer and then their pain points and never let go of that. So that's second. Third is building other job functions like being able to switch gears. Like the context switches in my world is insane. For example, like in the morning I had a lawyer meeting before this, and then now we are doing this podcast interview. After this, I'll probably go to like physical therapy, and then after that, I will have a monthly team wide meeting where we are presenting across all job functions. So the context switches and being able to compartmentalize and learn on the job, I think that helps a lot. So my 14 years of training helped a lot on that.
And when you're hiring new team members today, what do you look for? And when the candidate is clearly not a fit?
Yeah. So I typically just ask them about like I personally look for like someone who's very hungry. I don't like skills we can teach. I personally look for someone who's very hungry, motivated. The passion is clear, like motivated to learn. For example, one of my motto is I'm always in pursuit of knowledge and excellence. So someone who is closer to that kind of attitude. And then also easy no hire is of course like we don't handle assholes. So that's like we don't want to work with jerks. This is like a family. I don't want to mess up with the family. So if I see signs of that, that's very easy. But yeah, typically highly motivated people, passion should be clear. They want to work on hard problems, and then they are willing to learn on the job. Like technologies and techniques will change. So someone who is like adaptable enough and curious enough to just keep learning will be much better fit here.
Lots of startups tend to hire, at least at the very early stages, tend to hire people who are earlier in their careers and trade in their experience for hungriness, just as you said. I'm curious, there is other reason for them to do that because more advanced, say, people who are more advanced in their careers may not be interested in joining them. In your case, it's a little bit different, or is it the same thing?
No, no. So hiring, like for example, if someone wants to hire me, it's a very uphill task, right? So like for 15 years of experience for someone to hire me. But thankfully, in our company, we actually have a great mix of like I think like more than half of the company is actually at least 30-40% of the company has worked for like 15 plus 10 plus years. So it's actually very senior team. Like Nauki that I'm talking about, he actually worked 2 years longer than me. Brian, he actually who leads our biz dev team. He actually came out of like 12 years startup. So he actually has worked longer than me. Then Oliver has worked for like 30 years. Yeah, we actually don't hire. Thankfully, we have the luxury that we only have hired like 2 fresh grads so far out of 35 people because it's like a very senior team. So it's harder for fresh grads. While we mentor, it's harder for fresh grads to ramp up so quickly in this remote setting.
It is harder.
Yeah.
How do you expect, by the way, to deal with that during the growth stage when you will be hiring more people?
Yeah, so I always, I mean, while I'm not like not hiring fresh grads, so I'm keep hiring. Thankfully, we our word of mouth within our network is very strong. So I think out of 35 people, 17 of them I know for like 6 plus years. So I'm able, like, we are able to work together very well. In terms of fresh grads, what we really do is like, in addition to the management, we always assign everybody one mentor whose job is actually to make sure that person is successful. And even if that person wants to complain about their manager, the mentor should just listen and not tell anyone, right? So it's like a internal therapist or someone to listen to. So internal champion, actually champion is a better word. So we call them mentor. So we always assign one more in addition to, and it needs to be from different, not on the same team, right? So that way it needs to be different than manager. So that's one of our ways. Second, of course, is like documentation, like document. A lot of async communication. So we always create for every new hire. We try to create a like 2-3 page ramp up plan with like all the links, and we also have a technique called like every week we do deep dives. So anybody wants to talk about anything, and they can come talk, and we record it. So there's like a corpus of all of these deep dive recordings, and people talk about like bone marrow donation. Like we talk about anything and everything. So everyone on our team is very hyper focused on the bone marrow and increasing the registry. So he talked about that in one of the deep dives. So that helps a lot. So all of these recordings are actually good corpus of knowledge for someone new to like ramp up. And then also the manager needs to have weekly to ensure continued success.
Assigning a champion is a good idea. It's like your own internal mentor, the person who understands how the company works, and the person who is much mature than you are, so can help in general navigate.
Yeah, and won't have powers on your performance review or comp or anything, which is very key. Like that person will not affect. You can talk anything.
And must keep everything confidential, which puts a lot of pressure on the mentor and
Yep.
requires the mentor to be of a very high grade.
Yep. Thankfully, thankfully, that's why I have like 17 folks who I know for a long time. So it won't be possible for in every org. It is only probably possible in our org.
It is very fortunate.
Oh, I'm lucky like that. Like all these folks actually came over and joined. Yeah, I'm having fun.
Yeah, let's talk about you. There is a blog post that you wrote with some of your lessons learned, and I went through it and I picked some of them to talk about. But before that, what's the story behind that blog post? How did it come together?
Yeah, so I wrote 42 rules to live by. It's just good to have like rules. So that way, when tough decisions, you follow those rules. Because when the going gets tough, you tend to falter and make emotional decisions. So it's just rules to live by. A lot of those are like learnings from my father. A lot of those are before he passed away when I was 21. A lot of those are like learnings that I grabbed through last 2 decades. The real reason was I have had it all written in my personal diary, and one time I lost it. So after I found it, I was like, I need to type this in online forum so that I'll never lose it. And especially, I did it for my son. So tomorrow, when he wakes up, at least assuming I'm not there, he'll have something to look at, just in case I wasn't.
I see. So preserving the some of the advice of your father, combining it with your own, and now passing it down to your son.
And then also the subtle side effect of that is like diary was just for me, but now that blog post is there, so there's like multiple folks who actually like, for example, every person who joins our company reads that. Multiple folks outside who I mentor, I ping them. Like, they're like, give me some lessons. I'm like, here. So there's a subtle benefit that is actually reaching a lot more of the world than just me.
It is, and it shows everyone else more. It opens up more of your mind to other
Yeah,
people, so they
like
can
exactly
understand
what
you
our
better.
culture is. Yeah, exactly what our culture is. Yeah.
Because I think if we ask any person to write those principles, they will be different for every person. And by reading those principles, you can actually get a window into how the person thinks and what the person values are.
Yep, that is the hope. I took a big risk though, putting it out there in the public. So we'll see.
What is the risk though?
I don't know. Like I'm a little bit private person, so
Yeah. So the question is whether it's a risk or whether it's discomfort.
it's probably uncomfortable. Yeah.
Okay, so let's still pick one and talk about. You have one which goes how important it is to have three activities going at any time. One for the right analytical brain, one for the creative brain, and one for your body. Which three do you currently work on?
No, I always do. Like I do it for my son. I said it, tell it to all my mentees. I personally do it as well. So you always need like three activities: one for the left analytical brain, second for the right creative brain, and third for the body. So, for example, for body, I currently, because my fingers are broken, I can only swim. But I used to do a lot more like rock climbing, martial arts, all of that. One wheel is how I broke this finger. For the right brain, which is for the creative side, I do a lot of paintings. I really do a lot more, what do you call, sometimes I write poems for myself. For the left brain, basically, it's a big part of it is our job. So, like, basically, machine learning, anything, the hard sciences. So I do all of those three currently. Those are the configuration. But I keep picking new techniques whenever I can.
You do have all three. I wonder if every person can be like that.
I always do, and I always have my son do the same.
What are his three favorites?
So same. So he drums a lot. So for the creative brain, he drums, swims, and bikes a lot. And then of course school is there for the hard section. Yeah. He also paints a lot. Like he does a spray paint. Basically, I have all these activities. I just keep getting him involved with as much as possible.
Yeah, that's how they pick up our passions.
Yep. No, he's a great drummer. He's been drumming for like 6 years now. I started him at like 2 years old. So he's 8 year old, but he can drum like Metallica, Bon Jovi, you name it. Like Phil Collins. Dave Grohl is his favorite. Yeah.
It's so great. He'll be a treasure for any school band.
Yep. That's the plan. Let's see.
Okay, what happened to your fingers?
Oh, I was one of the activities I recently picked was one wheeling. So I was trying to like I reached like average level proficiency. I was trying to push the limits by like jumping off like speed breakers. So one time I was trying to do that, a kid came in front, so I had to take myself down. So I broke like 3 fingers.
Yeah, the one wheel is a very dangerous vehicle.
It's not as dangerous as skydiving. I was going for like skydiving license.
So we should consider ourselves lucky that you went with one wheel.
No, I'm not giving up on skydiving either. I will do it.
Okay, let's turn to the future now.
Yep.
What are your long-term goals for the company?
Yeah, so I personally, again, the same rules, right? So that way I don't have to worry about it. So I personally have done few billion plus ARRs. I personally would like to 10x it. So again, 10x. So if possible, if not 10 billion, if possible. Otherwise, yeah, it will be a little disappointing. But at the end of the day, the main North Star is actually just increasing the utility function of machine learning in this world. And I'm trying to do my part by kicking the ball forward. So we just, thankfully, I'm lucky enough that we have assembled a great team and we'll keep assembling, keep building the company across all job functions. And then hopefully we'll increase our probability of success and apply machine learning. And right now we are focused because of go to market in like revenue generating ones. Over time, we will start digging in the healthcare, education, and those ones and start building products, hopefully in like 10 years. So let's see, just keep building, keep growing. And hopefully, when we'll reach a 10 billion and you'll ask me, I'll do again 10x in 10 years. So it will become like 100 billion will be the next. So my friends actually joke that about me. So yeah, basically just keep 10xing in 10 years. Simple rule.
And you have all the necessary ingredients for that: the team, the capital, and the market that is just beginning to unfold and grow.
It's still, we might fail, but we will try. We will see. As with every startup.
Yes, this is one of the conversations I had recently with someone when I said, or I suggested, pick your goals in a way that you cannot fail. It's easier for your ego, and it's not about sandbagging. It's about setting a goal, just like you said, advancing the utility function of machine learning in the real world. You cannot fail in it. Everything you do, if you did something during the day that was in service of that goal, actually got you closer to that state.
Yep.
And yeah, the company may never grow to that huge size, or maybe the first company may never grow and the second will, and or the third will, as long as you continue to focus on the fact that you actually advance in the value function. And if shells change, companies change, your roles change,
Yep.
everything can change, but that thing stays, the threat stays, then you're never defeated, you never failed.
Yep. Another, like, I'm a math guy, right? Another way to think about that is play infinite games, not finite games. So like having a number like 1 billion, reaching that, otherwise I'll fail. That's not that's like finite game. But the infinite game, which is basically you just keep the game to keep it running, which is like advancing the utility function of machine learning. That is infinite game. You just keep playing.
And speaking of infinite game, when you think about evolution of AI over the last years and what you see coming in the future, what excites and concerns you most there?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest concerns is only limited to like a few handful big companies. Like I participated in that as well, that story. So some of it is my fault as well. So a lot of innovation is actually restricted in these 5 companies on the planet, and some of it is because it requires that kind of like 10 years of $1 billion bet, right? So not everybody can afford that, which is understandable. But I think a lot of folks are leaving the school and research, which was like the open source, and then joining these companies. So the talent pool is moving over. I mean, they all should make their individual choices. I have no complaints about it. I'm just stating a like phenomena. So fewer research is happening in school, either because of lack of funding or these companies paying so well. Like not everybody likes their millions. So that's one. In terms of on the technical side, I think the machine learning has two big problems. One is like explainability, which is very early phase. Like why did this model predicted this? Like please explain. And the deeper the model, the harder it gets. And then second is biases, which is like the training data is skewed in some, like either it is like, for example, US data is a lot more, like a lot of models are trained on US data versus like let's say India data. Right? So there are like biases across like region, gender, say, like across all the boards. So having tools and methodologies to detect them early before it actually gets applied will be one of the most forefront research that is still in the nascent phase. So explainability and bias detection and removal will be the biggest one.
Yeah, and they go hand in hand, just as you said. It's so hard to identify bias sometimes because you don't have explainability, you don't have the transparency into what's happening inside. The machine learning models are like our intuition,
Yeah.
where we come up with something and there is no way. And it's not clear with the current architectures if there will be a way to look into them. Do you think our opportunity to fight bias is with data curation then?
Yeah.
Making sure that we clean it from data that we train models on before we train them?
Or for example, efforts like this data commons, right, where we do a evaluation and we create like a evaluation data sets. So basically, as you said, if it is like intuition, the only way you can do is introspection to see how it behaves. So there could be like a list of data sets, which could be like standards. And then we run that through every model version. And then we can say, oh, this has gender bias, this has this. So there's like a lot of, so you can curate these standard data sets, which should be probably manually checked and analyzed and very well, because there could be bias in that as well. So we need to invest some time on that. I think data commons is probably, it will be on their roadmap, but if not, somebody else will do it. And then we run all the models through that data sets and see how it behaves. That's one. Second is breaking the complex models into a bunch of ensemble of models. So that way you can achieve at least some explainability. So for example, embeddings is a good way, right? So once someone says this embedding doesn't have biases, then you can build on top of that, knowing that that piece is set. So, but yeah, I have so many ideas on this front. As I said, it's like very early days. So there'll be a lot of fun work which will come in coming decade.
It will be a lot of fun figuring this out, that's for sure. Okay, how can listeners learn more about Jarvis and where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, so we have a good presence on jarvisml.com. We have like Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of the accounts with the same name, Jarvis ML Inc. In terms of And if you are really looking for joining an awesome team like Jarvis ML/about has information about all of us, investors, and our team as well. And then there is a career page as well. So please feel free to apply. We would love to work with awesome people.
I'll make sure to link all of those in the show notes.
Thanks.
Rakesh, thank you for joining me today. It was great talking to you.
Thanks a lot. It was an amazing conversation. Thank you for having me.